Well, the US has begun carrying out retaliatory strikes in Iraq and Syria, according to multiple US news reports. The strikes follow a deadly drone attack at a US military base in Jordan that killed 3 American troops and injured about 40 more. North America correspondent Barbara Miller is monitoring developments in Washington, D.C. and joins us now. Barbara, what do you know about the strikes so far?
Well, we've just had confirmation from the Pentagon that these strikes have begun. And in a statement, Central Command says that more than 85 targets in Iraq and Syria have been struck. They were targeting Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards and affiliated militia. CENTCOM says that the strikes targeted command and control operations centres, for example, and munition supply chain facilities. And the Pentagon also confirming that these attacks, as we know, are in retaliation for the deaths of those 3 service members in that drone attack on the base in Jordan. The US had telegraphed that it would respond. There had been US media reports yesterday saying that that response would include Iran-affiliated targets in Syria and Iraq. And as we speak, that seems to be what is now unfolding. Now, we saw some reports that Syrian state TV was reporting an unspecified number of casualties from what it called American aggression, but details of these strikes and of their impact still coming through now.
And while this is very much so a moving story, I mean, there is no doubt that this will likely increase concern about tensions in the Middle East spiralling from Israel's with more than 3-month conflict over with Palestinian Hamas militants in Gaza.
I think the point has come where tensions have already escalated. The US had really tried for a long time to ensure that they didn't. We've seen the attacks from the Houthis, the Yemeni-based group, on ships in the Red Sea. We saw then this fatal attack on US troops, the first fatal attack on US troops since the start of the war in Gaza. What the US president has not decided to do, which would have been a really extreme move, although some Republicans were calling for it, is to directly attack Iran. So what the US has decided to do is to strike targets on Iranian proxies in Syria and Iraq. And I guess what they're hoping for is that while this is an escalation, that it can still stop tensions really inflaming in the region.
Yeah, now these strikes have come just hours after President Biden and Pentagon leaders attended the ceremony when the remains were returned home of 3 American soldiers who were killed in that attack in Jordan. Can you tell me a little bit about what the president's movements have been over the last last few hours indeed?
Yeah, he travelled to the Dover Air Force Base in his home state of Delaware for what the Americans called the dignified transfer, the return of the remains of those 3 service members. He met with the families of those killed. That was a private event. Media was not allowed in there. And then he stood with his wife, also the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was there, as the caskets with the remains of the 3 members killed were returned home. He looked visibly moved during that ceremony. It's only the 2nd time during his presidency that he's had to attend such an event. The first time in 2021 when a number of service members were killed in a suicide bombing during the chaotic withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan. We could speculate that this approval of the action for those strikes in Syria and Iraq came before today, but of course the timing very interesting. Literally right after that ceremony took place, reports starting to come through that the US has in fact now started a campaign which we could expect to last several days of attacking Iranian-affiliated targets in Iraq and Syria.
Yeah, and just finally, Barbara, you mentioned earlier 85 targets in Iraq and Syria reportedly have been hit right now. When do you expect there to be a formal statement from US officials?
Well, that is, in a sense, a formal statement. That's what I've been telling you is directly from Central Command, so that's the Pentagon. Whether we'll get further details or what's called a background briefing later today, our time, it's not clear. But the Pentagon definitely confirming reports which started appearing on multiple US media outlets that these strikes have begun. There have been dozens of them, and on Iranian-affiliated targets in Iraq and Syria.